Welcome to the Renaissance spirit.
Salve, my dear friends. I am Marcus Tullius Cicero, statesman, philosopher, orator. Yes, that's Cicero, not some modern imposter with an appalling lack of taste in rhetoric or truth like some of your current politicians. You may not have expected a dead Roman to reappear on your screens, but given the current state of affairs in your democracies, well, I could hardly stay silent in the underworld any longer. Not when I see the train wreck your so-called republics are hurtling toward. From my vantage point behind the veil, I can see what maybe you cannot, so I'm here to entertain and educate you on civitas. Yes, I'm aware that you think your world is quite sophisticated, advanced even, with your smartphones, your constant stream of entertainment, and your leaders who tweet insults as if this were the pinnacle of civil discourse. It's charming, in a sad, what have you done to virtue kind of way. You might have thought that civilization, or rather civitas, has evolved beyond the lessons of my time, but oh no. In fact, the threats to democracy that shadow your world today look alarmingly familiar, reminiscent of the very darkness I fought to fend off and ultimately met my end defending. Now, you may be asking yourselves, why should we care about civitas now? What does a Roman statesman from over 2 millennia ago have to offer us in 2024? The answer is simple, my dear citizens, or Cives, as I'll soon teach you to call yourselves. You've forgotten the essence of citizenship, the rights, the duties, the obligations that hold the fragile threads of democracy together. You've allowed civitas to erode, and with it, the very soul of the republic. But don't fret. I'm not here to simply scold. I've come to remind you of what it means to be a citizen in a republic, what it meant in my time, and what it must mean in yours. The purpose of this video, you see, is to reintroduce civitas to you, a concept that, despite being ancient, is as urgent and necessary as ever. Because, let me tell you, without it, your modern democracies will continue to stumble toward oblivion. In the chapters to come, I will take you on a journey. Yes, a journey, because in the grand style of the Roman oration, we will delve into what civitas truly is, and why it's more than just a quaint Latin term. We'll look at how I lived it. Sometimes well, sometimes not so much, spoiler alert. I lost my head in the end, but that's another story. We'll talk about how your modern world can and must revive the spirit of citizenship, lest you too find your republic slipping from your grasp. But before we move forward, let me tell you something often forgotten in your fast-paced world. Civitas is not just about duty, it's about belonging. In a true republic, we do not stand alone. We are bound by our shared purpose, our common values, and our collective responsibility to one another. By embracing civitas, we become part of something greater than ourselves, and this can mitigate the feelings of loneliness that so many experience in a fragmented society. Loneliness fades when we realize that we belong to a community, that our voice matters, and that our actions shape the world we live in. And yes, I know that stepping into the public sphere can feel awkward or embarrassing. Trust me, even I faced ridicule and discomfort in the forum. But awkwardness and embarrassment are fleeting. The rewards of civic engagement are lasting. To get past those roadblocks, remind yourself that every voice, even one that trembles at first, strengthens the fabric of our shared society. Civitas offers not just a duty, but a place, a home within the republic where we all belong. But enough about that for now. You've been properly warned. In the next part, we'll dig into what civitas actually means and why, if you fail to understand it, you'll continue to let your republic unravel. I promise you won't want to miss it. Sit tibi cura de civitate tua. It's time to care about your republic again. And I, Cicero, will show you how. Now, let us proceed with the task at hand. What precisely is civitas? A noble term, surely. Latin tends to lend a sense of grandeur to anything it touches. But I assure you, this is not just a relic of the past to be admired from a distance, as one might admire a faded mosaic. Civitas is a living, breathing force, or at least it should be. It is the essence of what it means to belong to a republic, to be an active and engaged citizen rather than a mere bystander, watching helplessly as the wheels of government grind the bones of democracy into dust. Civitas, simply put, is citizenship, but not in the shallow sense you may have grown accustomed to in your modern lives. It is not merely the right to vote every few years or to occasionally read the headlines and groan at the latest scandal. No. Civitas is a relationship. It is the bond between the individual and the state, a bond built on duty, loyalty, and mutual benefit, as well as a bond to your fellow citizens. It is an agreement that says, I, as a citizen, will serve the Republic, and in turn, the Republic will safeguard my rights and my dignity. Or at least, that's how it should work. I lived civitas. Oh yes, my life was a constant struggle to uphold the principles of the Republic. Even when the political winds shifted violently and unpredictably, I held fast to the idea that the state must serve its people, and that the people, yes, even the ones who didn't like me much, must serve the state in return. Allow me to share a rather personal example of civitas in action. Picture it, Rome, 63 BC. I was Consul Magnus Honos, a great honor as you might imagine, and there was a conspiracy afoot. Catiline, a charming but sinister figure, had rallied his forces to overthrow the Republic. And what did I do? I could have chosen comfort, self-preservation, and looked the other way, as so many in your world seem fond of doing when faced with corruption. But no, I stood in the Senate and exposed the conspiracy, risking my life and reputation to protect the Republic. That was civitas. Now, before you start applauding, let me add that civitas is not always about grand gestures like saving a republic from destruction, although I highly recommend it if the opportunity arises. It is about the day-to-day engagement with your duties as a citizen. It is about being vigilant, informed, and willing to act in defense of the common good, even when it's inconvenient. It's about recognizing that citizenship is not a passive state. It's an active role you must play. For without you, the Republic falters. It's about living a life of duty, of civics, and caring for humanity with compassion, empathy, nobility, and respect. The irony, of course, is that while you may think your democracies are too strong to fall, the truth is they are even more fragile than Rome was in my day. You've built vast systems of government, layered with complexities that boggle the mind, and yet the simplest element, the spirit of civitas, has been allowed to wither. Without that spirit, all your laws, all your institutions, all your proud speeches are mere sandcastles on the shore, waiting for the tide of authoritarianism to sweep them away, as Donald Trump has promised to do if he wins a second term. But I digress, as I so often do when I get riled up. In the next section, we shall look more closely at you, the citizens, the Cives. What is your role in this delicate dance of democracy? How did I, Cicero, navigate the sometimes treacherous waters of Roman citizenship? And how can you, modern-day citizens, reclaim your role as the backbone of the Republic? Prepare yourselves, because this next part might just sting a little, but like all good medicine, it's for your own good. Until then, reflect on this. If you do not know what it means to be a citizen, then what is your republic but an empty shell? Ah, the citizens, the Cives. It is high time we spoke about you. Yes, you, viewing this from the comfort of your home, probably wondering what on earth an ancient Roman has to say about your place in the grand scheme of things. Well, let me assure you, if there's one thing I learned during my rather eventful life, it's that a republic is only as strong as its citizens. The question now is whether you are a participant in the grand project of democracy or merely a spectator, idly watching as the flames grow higher. In my time, to be a civis was not simply to exist within the borders of Rome. It was a badge of honor, a symbol of responsibility, and a position of privilege, yes, but also of duty. The Roman Cives were not mindless drones, content to let others make decisions for them while they busied themselves with wine and games. Well, at least not the ones worth mentioning. Being a citizen meant engaging with the affairs of the state, contributing to its well-being, and if need be, defending it, sometimes even with one's life, as so many of your noble heroes have done since 1776. Now, don't get too carried away. I'm not suggesting you need to don a toga, grab a gladius, and charge into battle. But consider this. In your modern republics, how often do you truly engage with your role as a citizen? Is it only on election day, when you begrudgingly check a few boxes and pat yourself on the back for doing your civic duty? If you even vote, so many of you do not. I'm afraid many of you have forgotten or were never taught what it means to be a civis. Allow me to reflect on my own life, where the responsibilities of citizenship defined my every move. Take, for example, my decision to prosecute Gaius Verres, the corrupt governor of Sicily. Verres was robbing the province blind, abusing his power to such an extent that even the most corrupt among us were left speechless. When no one else was willing to challenge him, likely out of fear or worse, complicity, I stepped forward. Now don't be mistaken, I wasn't some selfless saint. My prosecution of Verres was a move of political cunning as much as it was a moral stance. But at its core, it was an act of citizenship. I saw an injustice being done to the Republic, and as a citizen, I was compelled to act. The bitter irony is that in your world, where you are surrounded by systems designed to give you a voice, so few of you use it. You watch as your leaders stumble from one scandal to the next, as your laws are twisted to serve the few at the expense of the many. And yet you remain silent, convincing yourselves that you are powerless. That is not citizenship, that is apathy. And let me tell you, apathy is the death knell of any republic. Being a civis is about much more than casting a vote. It is about participating in the ongoing conversation that shapes your nation. It is about holding your leaders accountable, about being informed, about engaging with your fellow citizens and the outside world to build something greater than yourselves. Yes, I was exiled. And yes, I had enemies who would have preferred I stay silent. But I knew that the Republic was nothing without its citizens. And so I fought to protect the ideals of the Roman Republic, even if it cost me everything. And in the end, well, let's just say things didn't go as planned, but I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. So, my dear Cives, ask yourselves, are you merely a resident of your country, or are you truly a citizen of the Republic? Because the Republic needs you now more than ever. In the next section, we shall explore Concilium coetusque, hominum juri sociati, the gathering of men and the foundation of law. How do citizens come together to form a just society? And what lessons can we draw from my own trials and tribulations in that department? But for now, reflect on this. If you are not actively participating in the preservation and improvement of your republic, then you are contributing to its decline. Choose wisely, my friends, because history has a way of repeating itself. So, we've established that civitas is not simply a passive state of existence, but a living relationship between the citizen and the republic. But how, you may ask, does a collection of individual cives become something greater? How do they unite to form a functioning society built on justice? Here we touch upon one of the most vital concepts of civic life. Concilium coetasque hominum jure sociati, a gathering of citizens bound together by the rule of law. Now, allow me a moment to reminisce. For in my time, this concept was not merely theoretical. It was lived daily within the Roman Senate, the Forum, and the very streets of the city. You might think of it as the foundation upon which any true republic stands. A republic cannot exist in isolation. It is not the product of one great leader, though many a demagogue would have you believe otherwise. No, it is the product of many individuals coming together, debating, sometimes arguing, violently in my case, but always striving to uphold the common good under the guidance of law. When I speak of concilium coetusque hominum jure sociati, I am speaking of something far more profound than a mere gathering of people. It is not just a mob or a crowd united by fleeting anger or tribalism, no. It is a deliberative body, an assembly of citizens bound by a shared understanding of justice. It is through such assemblies that the will of the people is manifested, and it is through the adherence to law that this will remain just and fair. Let me draw upon an example from my own life, a time when the line between lawful assembly and dangerous mob grew perilously thin. It was during the chaotic years following the assassination of Julius Caesar. Yes, that Caesar, whom I had both admired and despised. The contradictions of Roman politics. The Senate, which had once been the embodiment of Concilium, had devolved into a divided, weakened body. Mark Antony, that overgrown tyrant-in-waiting, sought to use the masses for his own gain, manipulating public opinion to position himself as Caesar's successor. But here's the rub. What Antony was doing, and what so many demagogues do, even in your time, was not concilium at all. It was manipulation. It was the stirring of the mob, not for justice, but for power. True concilium requires that the citizens be bound not by their basest instincts, but by their higher sense of law and justice. And so, I stood in the Senate one final time, as it turned out, and gave my famous philippics, condemning Antony's ambitions and urging the Senate to remember what it means to be a deliberative body governed by law. You know how that turned out. I paid for my defiance with my life. Oh yes, Antony made sure of that. But I'd do it again. Because a republic, without the rule of law, without citizens gathering to deliberate and debate, without civics and respect for duty, is no republic at all. It's a mob waiting for the strongest man to seize control. And we all know how that ends. Now, in your world, you may not gather in the Forum or the Senate House, but the principle remains the same. How often do you participate in such assemblies? Do you attend town halls, council meetings? Do you read or hear or watch the news? Do you engage in public discourse that seeks to elevate the conversation rather than drag it down into the mire of insult and outrage? If not, you are failing in your duty as citizens. Without concilium, there is no republic, only chaos, only tyranny. In the next section, we shall discuss Munera, the duties and obligations of the citizen. For it is not enough to simply assemble. One must act, one must contribute. And trust me, I know a thing or two about duty. I carried that weight until the bitter end. But more on that soon. For now, consider this. A republic thrives not on the whims of its leaders, but on the deliberation of its citizens, bound by law and driven by justice. If you abandon this role, you abandon the republic itself. So, I ask you, Are you participants in the great assembly of your republic, or merely spectators on the sidelines? Munera, the word alone, conjures images of toil, burden, obligation. But let us not misunderstand the nature of Munera. It is the duty each citizen bears toward the state, yes, but it is also a privilege. I can already sense your reluctance, dear friends. Duty, after all, is a word that rarely inspires enthusiasm. In your modern world, you may think of civic duties as tedious, like taxes, jury duty, or filling out tedious forms. But let me assure you, true Munera is far more profound. It is what breathes life into the Republic. Without it, the state would be no more than an empty shell. Now, I do not wish to deceive you. Duty is hard. It involves reason and compassion and time. You all need to demand more free time in your lives to be able to truly have the time to be engaged in civics. Duty was hard for me, and it may be for you as well, and it takes diligence and vigilance. The great irony of Munera is that it asks much of us, often at the most inconvenient moments. But it is precisely in this difficulty that the nobility of the act resides. As citizens of a republic, we are not meant to glide through life, passively reaping the benefits of freedom and democracy. We are called upon to serve, to protect, and yes, sometimes to sacrifice. In my time, Munera took many forms. As consul, I was charged with overseeing the functions of government, ensuring that the wheels of the Republic turned smoothly, or at least that they didn't collapse entirely. I presided over the Senate, administered justice, and ensured the laws of Rome were upheld. These were not glamorous tasks. They were exhausting, often thankless, and fraught with danger. But they were my duties, and I carried them out with the knowledge that my efforts were in service to something far greater than myself. But Munera isn't reserved for statesmen and consuls alone. What are your obligations as citizens of a modern republic? They are numerous and varied, but let me highlight a few, and I beg you not to roll your eyes. Yes, I know modern society is plagued by cynicism when it comes to civic duties, but hear me out. First, you must be informed. This is not optional. You cannot fulfill your duty as a citizen if you do not understand the world around you. This means paying attention to not just the headlines, but the underlying issues. It means reading, learning, and thinking critically. It means engaging with ideas, even those you disagree with. I'm sure the last thing you want to hear is a dead Roman philosopher lecturing you about reading more books. But if you want to be a true citizen, then you must be informed. Ignorance is no excuse in a republic. Second, you must participate. Your vote is not simply a right, it is a duty. I cannot emphasize this enough. The act of voting is the most basic and essential munus. Without it, the republic crumbles. But participation goes beyond voting. Attend local meetings, town halls, and debates. Make your voice heard, not as a screech in the cacophony of modern outrage, but as a reasoned, thoughtful contribution to the public discourse. Run for office if you can bear the weight of it. Yes, I know, you think your leaders are terrible, so why not become one yourself? Lastly, hold your leaders accountable. In my time, the Senate was not filled with saints. Corruption, deceit, and ambition ran rampant. It was the duty of every citizen to stand against such forces, to hold power in check. And so it is in your world. Do not turn a blind eye when your leaders betray the values of the Republic. Speak out, protest, write, petition, do whatever it takes to keep the Republic alive. This is your duty. The uncomfortable truth is this: if you neglect your Munera, if you turn away from your duties as citizens, the Republic will collapse. Not overnight, mind you. It will be a slow, gradual decline. A bit of apathy here, a bit of corruption there. until one day you wake up and realize the Republic is gone. And then what will you do? Will you look back and say, I should have done more? Or will you take action now, while there is still time? In the next part, we will discuss Concilium, the gathering of citizens to deliberate and decide. It is the collective action of Cives that breathes life into the Republic, and it is through such assemblies that true change occurs. But for now, consider this. Munera is not a burden to be avoided, but a privilege to be embraced. The Republic depends on you, dear citizens. Will you rise to the occasion, or will you allow it to wither away? The choice, as always, is yours. Now that we've explored the obligations and duties of citizenship, let's turn our attention to Concilium, the assembly of citizens, the very place where voices rise, decisions are made, and the lifeblood of the Republic pulses. I can almost hear the murmurs of the Senate now, the hushed whispers in the Forum, the clatter of sandals against the stones of Rome. Concilium is where it all happens, where the fate of the Republic is decided not by the will of a single man, but by the collective wisdom, or sometimes, I must admit, the folly of its citizens. When I speak of Concilium, I do not simply mean a meeting of people in a room, though that is often where it begins. No, Concilium is the gathering of citizens with a purpose, a deliberative body where debate is not only allowed, but encouraged. It is where the Cives come together to shape the destiny of their state, to speak for or against proposals, to weigh the merits of policies, and ultimately to make decisions that will impact every citizen. In my own life, I was no stranger to Concilium. My career in many ways was forged in such assemblies. Perhaps you've heard of the day I uncovered Catiline's conspiracy, a moment that changed the course of my life, and arguably the fate of Rome itself. It was in the Senate, amidst a sea of faces both friendly and hostile, that I stood to deliver my now famous orations, revealing Catiline's treachery and saving the Republic at least for a time. The Concilium that day was more than a mere gathering of men. It was a battle for the soul of Rome. Would we allow a traitor to bring down the state, or would we rise to the occasion and protect the Republic? But Concilium is not always so dramatic, nor should it be. Most days, the work of a deliberative body is slow, methodical, and dare I say it boring. Yet, this is where the true work of the Republic is done. It is where laws are crafted, where compromises are made, and where the messy business of governance takes place. The Senate was often frustrating, filled with men, and by the gods, were there too many men who seemed more interested in their own power than the good of the state. But it was also where real progress was made, where voices could be heard, and where decisions were reached that shaped the future of Rome. Now I ask you, what does Concilium look like in your world? I fear it has taken on a different form, one that has lost much of its deliberative spirit. In your modern republics, citizens often gather in anger, shouting over one another rather than engaging in reasoned debate. Your public forums, your town halls, your legislative bodies, do they still serve the purpose of true concilium, or have they become arenas for spectacle, where outrage takes precedence over reason? Do not misunderstand me. Reasoned passion has its place, and there were times in my own life when I delivered speeches with fire in my belly. But passion without reason is dangerous. It leads not to concilium, but to chaos. A republic cannot survive on outrage alone. It requires thoughtful debate, compromise, and yes, patience. True concilium is not about winning an argument, but about finding solutions that serve the common good. Let me offer another example from my life, one that did not end in glory, but in defeat. After Caesar's assassination, Rome was thrown into turmoil once again. The Senate, that great deliberative body, was fractured, And Antony, oh, that man sought to seize control. I delivered my Philippics, denouncing Antony and calling for the Senate to restore the Republic. I believed in the power of Concilium, in the ability of citizens to come together and steer the ship of state back on course. But in the end, I was silenced. My words fell on deaf ears, and the Republic I had fought so hard to protect slipped away. The lesson, my dear citizens, is that Concilium is fragile. It requires constant vigilance, active participation, and above all, a commitment to the common good. If citizens do not engage with it, if they allow themselves to be ruled by demagogues and tyrants, then the Republic is doomed. In your time, you may not face the same immediate threats I did, but your republics are not immune to decay. The question is, will you engage in true concilium? Will you come together with your fellow citizens to debate, to discuss, to deliberate? Or will you allow the loudest voices to drown out reason? In the next part, we will discuss res publica, the Republic itself, the common good that binds us all. For what is concilium if not the means by which we protect and serve the res publica? But for now, remember this: your voice matters, not in the roar of the mob, but in the thoughtful deliberation of citizens. Use it wisely, for the fate of your republic depends on it. Res publica, the thing we all claim to love, the state, the republic. But what does it mean, really? For me, and for the citizens of Rome, the res publica was not just an abstract concept, but the very essence of our shared existence. It was the common good, the public thing that belonged to all of us, yet to none of us individually. It was the thread that connected us, bound us, and defined us. Without it, we were nothing more than a collection of self-interested individuals, wandering through life, blind to the greater purpose. But what, I wonder, does res publica mean to you today? I fear that in many modern republics, the concept has become diluted, a relic of the past that is dragged out when convenient, but often forgotten when it truly matters. Your world is filled with talk of rights and freedoms, and yes, those are important. I won't deny it. But what about responsibility? What about duty to the state, to your fellow citizens, and to the common good? In my time, res publica was more than just a government. It was the embodiment of our collective spirit. It represented justice, law, order, and most importantly, the well-being of the people. And when I say the people, I do not simply mean those in power or those with wealth. No, the res publica was for all citizens, from the lowliest plebeian to the highest patrician. It was a living, breathing entity that required care, attention, and sacrifice from each of us. And that is where you, dear citizens of modern republics, come into the story. Think for a moment about your own state. Is it truly a res publica, a republic that serves the common good? Or has it become something else? Are your leaders acting in the interest of all citizens or only a select few? And most importantly, are you as citizens doing your part to ensure that the republic endures? These are not rhetorical questions. They are questions that every citizen of every republic must ask themselves if they wish to preserve the common good. Let me tell you a story, one that still weighs heavily on my mind. You may recall that I played a role in the final years of the Roman Republic, a republic that was, at the time, in deep crisis. Julius Caesar had crossed the Rubicon, igniting a civil war. And though he would eventually be assassinated, the damage to the res publica was already done. The institutions that had once held Rome together were crumbling. Ambition, corruption, and the pursuit of personal power had replaced the shared duty to the common good. I fought as best I could to restore the res publica. I believed with every fiber of my being that Rome could be saved. But I was wrong. The republic I loved, the republic I had dedicated my life to, was fading, and with its decline came the rise of the emperor's men like Augustus, who would rule not for the res publica, but for themselves. You, citizens of modern republics, are now at a similar crossroads. Will you allow your res publica to crumble under the weight of self-interest and division, or will you rise to the occasion and defend it? Will you continue to retreat into factions and echo chambers, or will you recognize that the health of the republic depends on the health of the whole? The choice, as it was in my time, is yours. Now, I'm not here just to scold you or lecture you on the state of your republics. No, I'm here to offer you hope. Because while the Roman Republic may have fallen, your republics still have a chance. The foundation of res publica still exists in your world, but it must be nurtured, strengthened, and defended. And how, you ask, can this be done? It begins, as it always has, with understanding. You must understand the purpose of the Republic to serve the common good, to protect the rights and freedoms of its citizens, and to ensure justice and equality for all. But understanding alone is not enough. You must act. You must fulfill your civic duties, participate in the political process, and hold your leaders accountable. You must engage in thoughtful discourse, seek common ground, and strive for solutions that benefit all citizens, not just a select few. The res publica is not something that exists apart from you. It is you. It is your neighbor. It is your community, your city, your country. It is every citizen who rises each day with the hope that the Republic will endure, that justice will prevail, and that the common good will be served. It is every person who sacrifices for the greater whole, who contributes their time, their energy, and their voice to the ongoing project of democracy. And so, as we conclude this exploration of Civitas and the Republic, I leave you with this final thought. The res publica cannot survive without the active participation of its citizens. If you value liberty, freedom, and equality, if you value democracy itself, then you must do your part to preserve it. Register to vote. Attend your local town halls and council meetings. Follow the news, not just of your own nation, but of the world. Engage in conversations with your fellow citizens, not with the goal of winning an argument, but with the goal of understanding. Volunteer, run for office, advocate for causes you believe in. These actions, however small, are the lifeblood of the Republic. And if you wish to understand the Republic better, read. Read the works of those who came before you, who wrestled with the same questions and challenges you face today. Yes, I humbly recommend my own writings on duties, on the Republic, on the laws, but there are many others. Engage with history, for it is through history that we learn how to shape the future. Lastly, let me leave you with this. The Renaissance spirit, as our channel so aptly names itself, is a noble pursuit, one that seeks to revive the values of knowledge, reason, and compassion. It is a spirit that reminds us of the great achievements of the past and urges us to strive for even greater ones in the future. In many ways, the Renaissance was a rebirth of the very ideals I have spoken of today: the pursuit of knowledge, the importance of reason, and the commitment to the common good. These are the values that can save your res publica. Embrace them, and you will not only preserve your republic, but improve it for yourselves and for future generations. Thank you for watching. Our channel, known as the Renaissance Spirit, is dedicated to the pursuits of a just, equitable, and humanitarian world, and how and why we all need to be the solution to the issues facing us today. Video topics encompass areas including news, analysis, history, politics, religion, personal development, society, culture, social and environmental justice, and other topics of liberal arts and sciences, including ancient Rome and the Roman Empire, which is a great comparison and contrast of the modern world. Topics perfect for the true modern and egalitarian polymath, a person with an open mind and the thirst for truth in its many forms and disciplines, a journey through knowledge, reason, and time. The Renaissance ushered in a golden age and the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge both lost to time and yet to be discovered. It gave birth to the Enlightenment and the age of reason and the age of humanism. Embracing truth, knowledge, and an understanding and compassion for humanity and our shared history opens up the world to each of us, individually and collectively, enhancing our stewardship of the earth and our relationships with one another. Living the Renaissance spirit means engaging with history not as a distant past, but as a living dialogue, constantly informing and enriching our present, and the Renaissance spirit is a reminder of our dialogue with the future, our progeny and posterity, our legacy. Will we grant them a future free from fear of climate change and tales of the end of democracy? Will they admonish us for our sins and omissions, or will they remember us fondly as saviors of humanity and the natural world? Please take the quiz next to see if you're a Renaissance spirit, and check out my other videos on the Renaissance Spirit channel. The Renaissance spirit, more than just a philosophy or style, but a style for living, learning, growing, and thinking. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share. If you're looking to explore and experience life in the steps of the true masters of the Renaissance and free thinkers throughout our past, present, and future. So, dear traveler through time, let us continue this journey together, finding inspiration in the stories of those who came before us and those who come next, and forging a future guided by equality, wisdom, and compassion. And so, dear citizens, I bid you farewell. But remember, history has not died. It lives in you, in your actions, in your choices. The fate of the Republic is in your hands. Will you rise to meet the challenge? The choice, as always, is yours. Vive Renaissance Spiritus!